What's going on, everyone? So the Utah Jazz gave Lauri Markkanen that new extension, and with that, it's going to be interesting to see which direction and approach that they take this upcoming offseason and into the season, right? Now that you have Lauri Markkanen committed and you have him long term, he's not 22, 23, right? He's 27, which means you can't really have this 5-year rebuild, right? Utah, more likely than not, is going to need to kind of start pushing some chips to the table to really build around Lauri Markkanen. Now, you may trade Lauri Markkanen, right? Maybe they ride this season and kind of just, go in the next offseason and look to flip Lauri Markkanen because now he's under a new contract. But I think that they would have a really hard time in doing so. I mean, the market for Lauri Markkanen was already limited, and unless he has some super healthy season. I mean, this is a guy that's the most games he's played in a year was his rookie year in 68 games. Second most was only 66, and that was 2 seasons ago. But still, this isn't a guy that's playing, 70 to 75 games a year, right? So yeah, that plus a $40 million in salary, right? And it's how many teams are lining up to do that? And Lauri Markkanen, he's not your number one option. Is he your number 2 option? I don't think so. I think he's best as a third option. But again, how many teams are going to want to trade for him, give up a bunch of players, picks, and everything that the Utah Jazz would want? And, does it make you that much better is the question, right? So from that standpoint, Utah might not have a choice but to go and start making some moves. Now, do they go and look this season for those, you're hearing talks about Brandon Ingram potentially, right? Do they look at Brandon Ingram as the complementary piece alongside Lauri Markkanen, and those two guys are your 2 stars? Because he wants 40 plus million too. And now you're basically paying 2 third options as if they're the number 1 and number 2 option, right? Or are they looking at Brandon Ingram as an expiring $36 million contract? That's something I haven't really seen people talk about in regards to the Brandon Ingram trade. They're just oh, we want to go get Brandon Ingram. Are they looking at that as oh, we can bring in Brandon Ingram and re-sign him and pay him $40 million? Or are they looking at it as we could trade for Brandon Ingram and get off of Colin Sexton and maybe John Collins, right? Are they looking at that? That's where the Lakers could potentially come in. And now there's approaches where, I talked about Utah, made a video yesterday talking about Utah potentially being that kind of third team, right? Because they have some salary space that they can still absorb some guys, right? Maybe send some guys out, work out some things. But could Utah just be the trade or that first trade, right? Doesn't necessarily have to be the only trade, but could they just be the straight up trade partners? We know Danny Ainge loves the Lakers picks and assets, right? I mean, he's on record saying it himself. I mean, he was the reason we were able to unload Russell Westbrook, and we were able to do it for a protected first, just one, and get Jared Vanderbilt and D'Lo and Beasley and all that stuff, right? Could we maybe look to, hey, we have D'Lo and an expiring contract, right? We have D'Lo and his 0.6 million or whatever, right? That could be enticing to a team like the Jazz, right? And a Colin Sexton, maybe we can do something where we swap a Colin Sexton. I would love Walker Kessler. Can we get a Walker Kessler? But does Utah kind of look at now Walker Kessler as their center of the future alongside, a Lauri Markkanen? Now, they do have a flip, Kyle Filipowski. Do they look at him? Is he their future, right? I don't know. If you could get Kessler, that would be if we could get Sexton and Kessler, that'd be beautiful. Maybe you can kind of incentivize the Jazz. Hey, we'll take Walker Kessler, or not Walker Kessler. Take Walker Kessler, but we'll take Colin Sexton and his salary if you give us Walker Kessler, and we'll give you a pick or whatever, right? And then there's some kind of asset transaction part of it, right? A first, ideally 1 first, maybe a pick swap or I'd even, if you want, you have as many pick swaps as you want, right? Like, just as long as we can maintain one first, so we can go make that other move for maybe we're going to make it a move for a Cam Johnson, or maybe it is Jeremy Grant, right? Like, if we can turn D'Lo and something else like Christian Wood or something like that into both Colin Sexton and Walker Kessler, maybe you have to throw in another piece because Lakers have to send out more salary than they bring in, but you get the point. Like something along the lines, you could basically take D'Lo and swap him with Sexton, and then take a vet minimum guy and swap him with Kessler, throw in some picks, and then we'd still have Rui, Gabe Vincent, and Cam Reddish that you could go do the Jeremy Grant deal if they drop it to one first, right? So you could essentially turn Rui, D'Lo, and then Gabe Vincent into a Sexton, Kessler, and Jeremy Grant. If you do something like that, let's go try to win a championship, ladies and gentlemen, right? Like, to me, that would be fantastic. And, there's the debate and the conversation of like D'Lo versus Sexton, right? Regardless of who you think is better, right? Sexton is the bigger need, in my opinion. D'Lo's the better playmaker. Without a doubt. He's the better playmaker, right? But what Sexton provides is that athleticism. He provides that athletic ability that we need out on the perimeter. Problem is, he's been atrocious defensively. Now, how much of that is it's just the Utah Jazz and they were terrible defensively? It's different when your defensive unit is Anthony Davis anchoring the defense with like I said, a Cam Johnson or Jeremy Grant. You even have guys like Jared Vanderbilt, Max Christie, right? It's different when you have that compared to, it's just like you and Jordan Clarkson and, like John Collins and Lauri Markkanen. Like, it's just very different in that regard. So, to me, I mean, even if you just got Colin Sexton, right? If you could just like swap D'Lo and Sexton, I don't hate that. I don't, right? Because Utah might look at that as an incentive of like, hey, let's swap that, right? We get off the salary. Maybe they'd even willing to give something, right? I don't think that they would give us a first or anything like that because Sexton is still a good player, but maybe we could work something out to where maybe we get a second or something like that, and then we can use that as leverage to go get something else because you are doing them a favor. You're helping them, get off of that contract and and give them some flexibility and stuff rather than, if they did a deal with somebody else for Sexton and now they're taking on long-term salary. But ideally, if you could get a Walker Kessler, I wouldn't even mind getting Flip. I just don't know if they would trade him, right? But I mean, if you could get him in the deal, like, hey, if you want to keep Kessler, keep Kessler. Can we get a Flip in the deal? I mean, he was a second-round pick, right? So now you got that young development center that could be for now in the future. He's going to be on a cheap deal for a long time, right? I wouldn't hate that. Imagine, what if we could get Sexton and Flip for D'Lo and, like I said, whatever, right? Like a Christian Wood or something. And now you got that added to it. And then now you're going and working out a deal to go get a Jeremy Grant or something. And now you got Sexton. Because also another big problem that I've talked about is like, if you trade D'Lo, you need somebody that can fill that void, right? And especially if you trade D'Lo and Gabe Vincent. Right, so now like, who are your guards, right? Like, at that point, it's Austin Reeves, LeBron James, and hopefully Jalen Hood-Schifino, but we don't know how good or bad he's going to be, right? So that could be an issue in and of itself. So, to me, if you can get that kind of athleticism, in particular with Colin Sexton, he can play on ball, he can play off ball, he applies rim pressure, he's a good three-point shooter, right? He gives you a lot of the same stuff D'Lo did. So I don't hate the idea of just kind of swapping the two. I'd want to get something else in return, right? So that way it's not kind of a lateral move. It's like you're at least getting, you're winning a little bit, right? That, in my opinion, would be better. But, again, like, where is Utah's head at, where is Utah looking? Are they looking to kind of go all in and go and get a Brandon Ingram and try to go get another piece and, really kind of reshape this roster and try to be a playoff team this season? Or are they looking at it as like, let's kind of take this year, right? Then we go into next year, he'll get that new 4-year deal. I know he signed a 5-year deal, but this season, Lauri Markkanen, they just basically absorbed his new contract into their cap space. So do they look at it and go, okay, let's kind of use this year to kind of start retooling here a little bit, and then, clear off some cap space, go a specific direction, kind of hit the reset button. So then now we can start really putting pieces around Lauri Markkanen? Or do they look at it as like, no, like we're still staying the course, we're still rebuilding. Maybe we can try to find a Lauri Markkanen trade later on down the road. Because if they aren't rebuilding and they are a team that's like, hey, we want to try to get some pieces now, maybe they like Rui. Right? Maybe they're like, hey, Rui could be a nice piece. Maybe they'd like some, a Gabe Vincent to give him some defensive stability and just some veteran leadership. Or maybe you're working, like I said, maybe it's a 3-team deal and, pieces are going here, there, and the other, right? Like, it just, again, it depends on what does Danny Ainge value and what direction does he want to go, right? Because, you could keep Lauri Markkanen at the 3 and have a Rui at the 4. Right? Kind of go that route, or vice versa, or even swap them. I mean, Rui played the 3 for the Lakers this past season, right? I mean, there's options there, right? Do they look at it and go, man, we have so many young players, Isaiah Collier, Kyle Filipowski, right? Like we got all these young guys that we're trying to build around, Walker Kessler, right? Like, do they look at it and go like, no, we want to still keep the young core intact? Or do they look at it as like, no, like, if you can help us kind of lay the groundwork to start expediting this, not necessarily this season, but next season, let's do it. Like I said, maybe you can get a Flip. Maybe you could get, even a Collier attached to Flip. Like maybe you could work something out, right? Like I don't hate the idea. Again, in a perfect world, you get Kessler and Sexton. If you could get Kessler and Sexton, I'd want to keep at least one first. If you can get Kessler and Sexton, Lakers could give everything else, just keep one first, right? Give up, a first and your 3 pick swaps that you can trade, and then all your seconds. I don't care. Just make sure, because at that point you got your center now for now and the future. Again, he's 22, about to be 23. Like you have that for the long haul, and you get an upgrade in athleticism out on the perimeter, and you'd still have that first to now go make that move for a Jeremy Grant or whatever, right? If the Lakers could do something like that, then I don't care. Like trade whatever you have to. Just keep that first so that way you can go make that other move. Because Kessler and Sexton, I still think you need that other move. I think it makes you better, right? But I think you need that other move. But anyway, as always, this is a discussion. I pass a question on to you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. What do you think? How do you feel? What are your thoughts? Do you like the idea of the Utah Jazz as a potential trade partner? Do you think go talk to Utah, get them on the phone, right? Try to get Kessler, try to get Sexton. Would you be fine with like a D'Lo Sexton swap, or do you want something else? Would you be okay with like a Sexton and Flip type trade where, you're getting Kyle Filipowski in the deal too? Would that be fine instead of Kessler? However you feel, whatever your thoughts are, I'd love to hear it. Let me know down in the comments below. That being said, if you haven't liked this video, hit that like button. Helps me a lot. It's me enjoy these types of videos, and I truly appreciate it. Not subscribe to the channel, hit that subscribe button. Turn on the bell notifications. Appreciate y'all. See you in the next one. Thank you.